Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Ready for Rome orientation webinar. Thank you very much for joining us today. My name is Shelley Ruel, and I'm the community manager at ItaliaPass, and I'm joined today by my colleague, Sofia Baragaglia. She's our ItaliaPass Italy experience specialist, and between the both of us, we have a lot of information to share about Italy. I've lived in Rome for over 20 years now, and Sofia herself is from Italy, so we are really happy to be here with you and share some information. And also, we're going to have a live Q&A at the end. Before I get started with our presentation, though, I wanted to just really quickly go over what is ItaliaPass because a lot of you are here probably because you have purchased train tickets with Italia Rail. So Italia Rail is part of a family of brands, the Italia brands, that have worked with millions of tourists since the 1980s. And our CEO created Italia Pass as a benefits pass for all of the travelers within those customers within those brands to have their best trip to Italy ever. So Italia Pass is actually it's a pass with benefits. It costs $149. You get over $650 in value for your Italy trip. And the reason we let you know about this is because throughout the presentation, we're going to be sharing a little bit of information about some of the benefits in case it's something that you might want to add to your trip, because you can add it at any time. And also, we have a free community. So Italia Pass is also online at community.italiapass.com, which is the community where you'll find me and you can ask any questions, and that is absolutely free. All right, so what are we going to be looking at in our presentation today? The first thing we'll talk about with you is when you arrive at FCO Airport, that stands for Fiumicino, also known as Leonardo da Vinci Airport in Rome, and how to get into the city because the airport is just a little bit out of the city limits, about a half an hour away. There's different transport methods that you can use. We'll talk a little bit about our ItaliaPass Lounge at Rome's largest train station, Termini, in case that's something you're interested in. I'll tell you about how to get around the city with public transport and some information about local restaurants and how to avoid some of the more common tourist traps. And then Sophia will also give you some information about how you can get complimentary access to some of the most famous monuments here in Rome and how you can get $100 off of a tour. Then I will wrap it up with a couple of my favorite local tips for visiting Rome. And then at the very end, we will spend 15 minutes answering any questions that you have live. This will be in a chat format. So at the bottom of your screen, you'll have an icon that says Q&A. You can type questions into the chat box at any time throughout the presentation. We won't be able to answer raised hands or things like that, but if you type in your questions, we will round those up at the end and answer those live. And we'll also, after the presentation, I'll send you a follow-up email that will have a link to all the answers from those questions, as well as a recording of our presentation. So don't worry if you joined a little bit late or if I'm talking too fast, you'll also get access to this recording in an email after the presentation. So without further ado, I'm going to pass you over to my colleague Sophia to tell you all about arriving at the airport and how to get into the city.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Shelley. And thank you again to everyone for joining us today. Let's get started. Now you've landed at FCO Airport and you'll have a few options to get to the center of Rome. As you see on the slide, they're all indicated in the terminal. The first option would be, of course, the train. And there are two types of trains that you can take to reach Rome via rail. The first one is called Leonardo Express. This is a direct train to Roma Termini, which is the main train station in Rome. It costs around $18 on Italia Rail, and it's I would say the most popular train that people usually get to go into the city. As opposed to the second type of train, which is a more local train. It's also a regional train, both would count as regionals, but the second type, they don't really have a fancy name or anything, and they go to smaller stations inside the city. So those stations are Trastevere and Ostiense, and the tickets are slightly cheaper. They're, I believe, $10 on Italia Rail. As I said, both trains are considered regionals, so there's not a huge difference in in the service itself. I would say it really depends on where you're trying to get to in the city. One train might work better for you than the other one. Um, we generally get a lot of questions on whether or not you should book your tickets in advance for these tickets. And I would recommend doing so, especially if you're traveling during a busy time. Now things are slowing down a little bit, but Italy tends to be busy, especially FCO Airport. It's one of the busiest airports in Italy. So, when you're trying to get tickets directly at the airport, the queues can get very long, the servers can get overwhelmed. So I would just recommend, if you know exactly, if you already know your arrival time, to just get one in advance so you don't have to think about it once you land. However, Leonardo Express tickets, the first type that I mentioned, are time specific. So do make sure that you calculate exactly when you will be able to get the train. Um, I would recommend, I usually recommend booking at least 1 hour and 30 minutes, maybe 2 hours after your scheduled arrival time for your landing. And definitely no trains out of Roma Termini. So let's say if you're trying to get to another city in Italy, Florence, Venice, Naples, doesn't matter. You will have to catch the connection from Termini. So that connection, I would recommend um, don't book it like within 3 hours of arrival, just in case of delays, luggage issues, anything that can happen in an airport. You might want to make sure that you have a bit more time to navigate all of that. And also Roma Termini is kind of a big station. It's really easy to navigate. It's very user friendly, but you will still want, I would say, between maybe 15, 20 minutes just to get acquainted with it, find your platform and just, the usual. Um, so that's pretty much it for trains. Other ways of getting into the city include taxis, as you see on the slide. They have a fixed rate of 55 euros. There's some official ones right outside the terminal. Or you can take a shuttle bus or a private transfer. This you can actually book directly with us. It can take you to anywhere in Rome, whether that be your accommodation or if you're trying to get to the train station, we can do that. Um, Anywhere within the city of Rome, we can take you. So if you're interested, you can book it directly on italiatours.com. Or if you would like to hear more about it, you can reach out to support, and an Idle experience specialist like myself will be happy to help you. Now, next up, should I rent a car? So this is a question that comes up a lot, and I would say there's no universal answer for it, but I will try my best to give you a few pointers. Um, I would say if you know that you are going to be exploring some of the more remote areas of Italy, let's say, for example, Tuscany or the Amalfi Coast, which are very popular destinations, in these cases, renting a car can be a great option. In these areas, the public transport is not as the network is not as big as it is in the main cities. You might have to wait quite a bit of time for buses, local rail like trams or anything of that like. So just, for the sake of convenience, in those cases, renting a car is recommended, in my opinion, at least. However, if you're only going to be visiting the major cities, let's say Florence, Rome, Milan, I would not rent a car in these instances, since the best way to navigate in between these cities is by train. There's a high-speed rail network that connects them all. Um, and also, most of these cities have really, really strict car traffic rules that can just make navigation tricky. You might need a permit to enter certain areas or find parking. Just operating a car within the city walls in most old cities is not, it's not a fun experience, so I would not recommend it. And as I mentioned, you can get around. There's much better ways of getting around once you're actually within the cities. Regardless, the choice is up to you. If you do decide to rent a car, you can do so on our platform, italiadrive.com. and you would benefit from a $10 discount as an ItaliaPass member, which you can redeem after booking with us. Next up, another perk of being a member is access to the ItaliaPass Lounge, which you see here. This lounge is located inside the Roma Termini, which is the station I mentioned earlier. If you have some free time before boarding a train, or if you're waiting for your hotel check-in time, I would say this is a great hangout spot. You can come and relax with us. We have free Wi-Fi, espresso, refreshments. We also offer free luggage storage for larger suitcases, but also carry-ons. We also have some lovely lounge hosts who would be happy to answer any questions that you might have about your trip to Rome or your train tickets. So if you have some extra time, definitely come visit us. All you need to do is book your complimentary visit in advance, and we'll be ready to welcome you. And next, I'll hand it over to Shelley for some information on public transport.
Okay, thanks. So here we are in Rome with, you can see the bus here driving right in front of the Colosseum. Our public transport system is called ATTAC. Now, Rome is an extremely walkable city, and you are coming at one of the most beautiful times of the year weather-wise. It's not as hot as in the summer. So if you don't have mobility issues, you'll probably be doing a lot of walking. However, public transport can also come in handy at times. So that's why I want to give you a little bit of information about how it works so that once you get here, if you do want to try riding a bus or the subway, you feel comfortable about how to do that. So the first thing to know is that we do have 3 different types of public transport. The main one is buses. We do have also, though, a subway or an underground line. It's known locally as the metro. That's short for metropolitana. It's super easy to navigate because we only have 2 lines, the A line and the B line, and they only cross at one point, which is the station that you've already heard us talk about, Rome Termini. It's a transport hub. So if you need to change from line A to line B, there's only one place that you can do that. So that makes it easy. Trams are also available. Probably the only one you'll see is tram 8, which goes near Piazza Venezia downtown. So you may not be using those quite as much. Now, tickets are pretty reasonably priced compared to other large European cities. They only cost €1.50, and they are time limited. So you get unlimited rides on all forms of public transport for 100 minutes from the time that you first board your first transport. So the first time you board a bus, once you've boarded and you validate your ticket, you have 100 minutes unlimited rides. There's only one exception to that, and that's that you can only ride the subway once within that 100-minute period of time. So that means once you are in the station, you pass through the turnstiles into the subway station. You can ride the subway as long as you need to complete your journey. Once you leave the subway station, once you're passed back out on the other side of those turnstiles and exit, that ticket won't be good for another ride within that 100 minutes. If you needed to ride the subway again, you'd need to buy a new ticket. Now you're probably wondering, how do I buy the tickets? How does that work? So luckily, Rome is has come into the modern age. It's not always the case here in Rome, but we have with the tap and go system, which you'll find in a lot of other cities. So you can buy your ticket electronically by using a contactless payment method. The only thing there is that you do need to have one payment method for each rider. So you can't use the same contactless payment card for more than one rider. The way that works is, for example, in the subway, you'll take out your contactless credit or debit card and you just tap it on the reader, which is located right at the turnstile. And that counts as your ticket. It'll turn green. It'll charge your payment method $1.50. And then you have that as your ticket for the next 100 minutes. There aren't any inspectors inside the subways because you have to pass through a turnstile in order to board. So it's assumed that you've paid for your ticket to get on the subway. The buses, it's a little different because it's like almost like an honor system. So in other European cities, you might need to buy your ticket, or even like in New York, for example, you might like buy your ticket from the driver, or you might tap your ticket as you board the bus. In Rome, you don't interact with the driver at all. You just step aboard the bus and you're expected to have your ticket already. So that means that inspectors can come on the buses and want to look at your ticket. And if you're using the tap and go method, then you're just going to show whatever payment method that you used as your ticket, and they'll have it on their little handheld device. It will show up. If you give them your payment method, they can verify that you've already paid. So that is pretty simple way. I haven't really seen any buses anymore that don't have this. Probably because this year we have the Jubilee year with the Vatican, and that only happens once every 25 years, and Rome does a lot of renewal. And so we got a lot of new buses this year, which is nice. So they're kind of in the modern age now. However, if you do want to have paper tickets just in case, you can buy those at machines in the subway stations or at tobacco stands, which are called tabacaria. They're shops, actually. They have a T over the door, so they're easy to identify, or at any newsstands. And if you want to try your Italian, you can ask for a biglietto. That's how you say ticket in Italian. One bus route I did want to tell you about that's very convenient for tourists is bus 64. That bus runs from the main train station, Termini, all the way across the historic center over to the Vatican. So it's a really nice route for you if you're wanting to hit some of the main tourist points. One thing I would caution you about, however, it's kind of coming into lower season now. So probably the crowds won't be as much of a problem as they are in high season, like July, August. But still, be aware of your belongings if you take bus 64, because pickpockets know that this bus is usually filled with a lot of tourists. So it can kind of be a magnet for pickpockets. Now, I don't want you to worry about pickpocketing because I've been here for over 20 years. Like I said, I've never been pickpocketed and I don't do anything special. I'm just aware of my belongings. So like when I have my purse on public transport, especially for example, at the Termini subway stations where there's just any crowded areas, you can, if you have a purse, just wear it like across your body and keep your hand on it. Men with wallets, don't put it in your back pocket, keep it in your front pocket or in a like jacket pocket, like a breast pocket. If you have cameras, don't have them like hanging off, things of that nature. You just want to be aware of your belongings. I don't want you to worry about pickpockets because Rome is actually a very safe city. Petty crime can be a problem, but it's a crime of opportunity. And the pickpockets, they just go for the people who look really distracted because they're easy targets. And so you're not going to be an easy target because you're going to be aware of your surroundings and aware of your belongings. So don't worry, but do be aware of that in crowded areas. All right, moving on from transport, let's talk about the delicious food that you're going to try when you're here in Rome. A couple of things I'd like to tell you about restaurants that might be a little different than what you're used to. We do tend to eat a little bit later than, say, North America, or at least the US, Canada. We tend to eat lunch around 1 or 1:30 start time and dinner 8:30. The reason I tell you this is because if you're going to go to a very local restaurant where the local Romans eat, they're probably not going to be open outside of those time, like earlier than that. Like if you try to go to dinner at like 5 or 6 o'clock, the kitchen's probably not going to be open yet. There are restaurants that are open, of course, but if you're encountering a really local place, they might not be ready for dinner before 8 o'clock. The reason I put check on this bullet list is because there's something a little bit different here in Italy than compared to, say, the United States, where oftentimes your server will bring the check when they bring your food and just say, hey, here's your check. I'll take that when you're ready. Here in Rome, it's the opposite. They're not generally ever going to bring your check unless you specifically ask for it. And that's because they want to be courteous and not make you feel rushed, because it's a cultural tradition here. Like when we go out to dinner with friends and family, the waiters and waitresses want to respect the fact that this is your special time with your family and friends, and they don't want you to feel rushed. So they wait for you to indicate, okay, now we're ready. So if you're thinking, gosh, they're slow here, how come they're not bringing my check? That's actually not it. They're really just trying to be courteous and not make you feel rushed. So when you're ready, you can just signal to them that you would like, if you want to try your Italian, il conto, and they will be happy to bring your check for you. And speaking of the check, don't let any restaurants try to make you think that you have to tip, because that's not a real cultural tradition around here. The wait staff is paid a regular salary. They do not work for tips. So tipping is not really even expected. My local friends don't usually leave tips at restaurants. If you want to leave like a courtesy tip, maybe like €1 per person at your table, but certainly nothing like 20%. That would be kind of unheard of around here. So it might feel weird if you're coming from the States where that's expected, but that's not here. And while we're on the topic of tipping, same goes for taxis. Taxis don't expect a tip either. If you're paying in cash, you could round up to the next euro. But if you're paying by card, you can just pay the exact amount. You probably won't be prompted. I don't even think we have those prompts on the payment method where it says how much do you want to tip. That just isn't culturally a practice here in Italy. Moving on, let's talk about gelato. So if you're going to get the delicious gelato that we have here, a couple of things to be aware of that are kind of typical, more touristy type gelato places. If you see gelato like this one in the photo where it's piled high over the tubs, it looks really impressive, but really what all they've done is they've whipped a lot of extra air into it to make it look showy. But very traditional gelato will never really go above the top of the tub. So you'll see gelato like this in the downtown areas where there's lots of tourists, but it's not going to be terrible, but it's just not super authentic, kind of more commercial. Same with the bright colors. If you see really bright colors, that's a sure tip off that it's artificial coloring, and authentic gelato just uses the fruit. It doesn't put artificial colors in. Restaurants, the reason I've written here, these are a couple of touristy trap type things. If you see pictures on the menu, clearly that's for visitors and tourists because Romans, obviously, they don't need pictures. They know what they're going to eat, they know what it looks like. And then something I've called promoters. You'll see downtown that certain restaurants will have people standing out front trying to usher people inside. And that's also a sure sign that it's mainly for tourists and not for locals. Now, are you going to get a terrible meal at these places? Probably not. It'll probably be passable or decent, but the point is that it's probably not going to be like a Roman would eat. It's probably going to be more for a tourist palate. So, I'm going to give you some tips about and some suggestions of restaurants that I like in a resource list that I'll send you after this presentation. Next, Sophia's going to tell you, speaking of restaurants, about how you can get a really authentic meal and meet some really nice tourists like yourself in the process.
Thank you, Shelley. Yeah, next up we have our latest member benefit. This is actually brand new. It's Italiadine, and as you can see here, it's the Roman dinner party. So what is this? This event, this idea, came from, we wanted our travelers to experience something, of course, authentic. Just as Shelley mentioned, food, as everybody knows, I think food in Italy is a very important cultural part of everyday life. And so we thought, okay, how would it be to get fellow travelers around the same table for a Roman
Sophia, I think your audio is not working. Do you want to check it?
Hello?
Okay, you're back. You're back. It cut
Sorry.
out right, yeah, it cut out right when you started talking about getting travelers around the table.
Oops. I'm not sure what happened there.
Okay.
Uh, but yeah, the idea behind the benefit is just to get everybody around the same table so that they can experience a Roman family style feast. We have some lovely hosts who are passionate about local food and that can answer any questions you might have about the local traditions. Culinary traditions vary a lot throughout Italy, so There's a lot to learn if you're a foodie. And I would say Roman food in general is just extremely iconic. So you'll get to hear a lot about that. As I mentioned, this is a brand new benefit. So the reviews so far have been great. We've been adding more and more seatings each week. So if you're an ItaliPass member, of course, the experience is completely free. And if you want to add a companion, of course, you can do that. Otherwise, the dinner itself can be booked as an external benefit for $49 per person, even without an ItaliPass. However, at that point, I would just recommend getting a companion membership. But that's the overview. As per usual, the experience can be booked either through the links provided in our emails or by reaching out to support@italiapass.com. Next up, we have getting into the sites. So yeah, for all the exciting sites you'll get to see during your stay in Rome, let's start off with, of course, the Colosseum. Italipass members get one free tour of the Colosseum. It features exclusive access to the arena floor through the iconic Gladiators Gate. So, of course, if you're in Rome, the Colosseum is uh, unique even within Italy, if I'm being honest. There's very few arenas that are that impressive, so definitely make sure to take advantage of. It's a full guided tour, so definitely look into that. Um, we also have something that's more recent. For our members, we have free access to the Pantheon. That's for a self-guided visit, so it's a bit different, but I would still highly recommend taking a look at it if you have some free time in Rome. Then, of course, we have Vatican museums. We have guided tours. We have several, in fact, depending on which part of the Vatican you might be more interested in, as well as walking tours of the city. So our walking tours usually include Piazza Navona, the Spanish Steps, the Trevi Fountain, all of the highlights of the heart of Rome. You can usually find in our walking tours. So something that's worth mentioning is if you're spending at least 2 full days in Rome, we have something called the Rome Tour Pass, which is essentially a tour bundle. It's a package that you can get. And we say usually it works best for people who have at least 2 days. If you have more, that's also great. Because it includes everything that I've just mentioned, minus the Pantheon, which of course is a separate benefit. Um, but it includes the Colosseum, the Vatican, and a walking tour of the city. And it does take about, I would say, 2 days minimum to see everything and make sure that you have enough time to do so. Again, if you have a bit more time, just even better. But yeah, if that's something that if that's your timeline, you might be interested in the Rome Tour Pass. Regardless, if you choose one of these tours or some other tours throughout Italy, know that our members get $100 off of their first tour order and 10% off of any subsequent tours. So again, make sure to redeem those benefits. All of these that I've just mentioned can be booked on italiatours.com, of course. And if you have any questions, as always, just feel free to email us, or if you need any help booking them, we're always more than happy to help. The one thing that I would say is I highly recommend booking these tours as far in advance as possible. I would say as soon as you're aware of your dates when you will be in Rome, um, try to get every tour locked in, especially if you know, for example, the Colosseum, the Vatican, if you really want to see them. Just again, make sure you do so in advance, especially when it comes to the Vatican. There's very limited space. They only have a certain number of groups that they allow in every time. So last minute reservations can be a problem. Um, Another thing is the dress code. We get asked about it a lot. I would say general rule, if you're going to visit any churches, let's say basilicas or the main duomos, you will need to wear clothes that cover your shoulders and knees. This is especially true for the Vatican, but I would say it's a general rule for churches all across Italy, really. Um, but otherwise, there's no limitation. Just wear whatever you feel comfortable in. And don't bring large backpacks or bags because especially in the Vatican and in the Colosseum, they do not allow them for. So I would say a smaller bag, a crossbody bag, something like that will work much better. We also wanted to mention a special offer for our members. This is a free access to a special edition of Italy Magazine. Italy Magazine is one of our partner brands, another one. And as the name suggests, it's a magazine that's dedicated to all things Italy. And this one specific edition is focused on the Vatican and Vatican City as a general. So it's special because it's crafted for the Jubilee, which of course is this year. And it will just give you some insider tips into visiting iconic highlights of the Vatican. It's crafted for first-time visitors, but it's an amazing refresher for somebody who's already been there. So I would definitely recommend checking it out. And it's very easy to access. Just fill out a brief survey, and you can find all the information in the community. So yeah, back to Shelley for some local tips now.
Okay, so we're going to wrap up the informational part of our webinar now with a couple of my favorite local tips. The first one regards these water fountains that you're going to see all throughout the city. They're called Nazzoni. That is plural for big noses. And the reason that they're called that is because of the way the spigot is shaped. These water fountains, as you see in the photo, they have water running continuously. You don't have to turn them on or off. The water comes from deep underground springs. It comes out really cold, so it's perfect way to refill a reusable water bottle and keep hydrated as you're walking around downtown. And in my list of resources that I'm going to send you via email, I also have a link to a smartphone app that the water utility here in Rome has provided, and it will show you a map of all the Nazzoni through the city. There's like over 1,000, and from wherever you're at, you can see where they're located. So it's a really convenient way to get a refill without having to buy plastic bottles and get gouged from the downtown merchants selling the water bottles. Next is the aperitivo. You may have seen this iconic drink that you see in the photo called the Aperol Spritz. That's a famous aperitivo drink. The aperitivo is a pre-dinner tradition, kind of like a happy hour. It's around 6:30 that people will go out to an aperitivo before dinner. Now you can it's a drink with snacks generally, and it doesn't have to be with alcohol. It can also be, there's types of aperitivi that are non-alcoholic as well, or you could just get a Coca-Cola or a Sprite, whatever. The one you see in the photo is at Meccanismo. It's a restaurant that I like in Trastevere that has a really nice aperitivo. I think it's around 13 euros still, and they give you this board of all these snacks. You don't get to choose them like tapas. They kind of just bring it out chef's choice, but it could really be like almost like a dinner in and of itself. So it's a fun local tradition to try when you're here in the city. And if you don't want to go to an actual restaurant, you can even stop into any coffee bar that you see around aperitivo time, and you could just ask them for like a glass of prosecco or a glass of wine, or whatever you want to drink. A non-alcoholic one that's a Roman specialty is called crodino. It's kind of a bitter tasting like soda, and they'll serve that, and sometimes they'll have like little mini pizzette. They're called like little mini pizza bites, or even just potato chips and peanuts sometimes. So you can try around different places and see what you like, but that's a fun local tradition. So that wraps up the informational part of our webinar. Like I said, you're going to get an email probably tomorrow, because it's getting to be almost 7 o'clock here in Rome. So I'm going to gather up all this information and get it ready for you and then send it out tomorrow. You'll get links to the resources we've talked about, a recap of the Q&A that we're about to host, and you will also get a link to the recording of this webinar. But if you do want to see the slideshow again, the slideshow itself doesn't change much every time that we record it. You can go to our Italia Past channel on YouTube and you can click there. There's lots of past webinars that are available, already available and loaded up there. And the Q&As are always different. So at this point, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and Sophia and I will open it up to questions. And I see in our chat box that we already have 4 questions waiting for us. So feel free to go down to the icon where it says Q&A and type in any questions. We have about 10 minutes, 15 minutes to get through the questions. And if we don't get through them all, I will answer them offline. So make sure you get your question in the chat box regardless. All right, so let's see here. The first question says, would you recommend doing tours with a travel company? Since we are a large family, traveling and buying passes for each one and booking tickets seem like a very cumbersome process. Doing tours, I think with by travel company, I think this person means like Italia tours, like guided tours, I'm assuming.
I would think so. And I'm also thinking, correct me if I'm wrong, whoever asked, but if you're asking about a guided tour versus just the tickets, if you are in a large group, I would definitely recommend our guided tours. As you said, yeah, getting tickets individually can be tricky, especially for the major highlights, like the Vatican, the Colosseum. We hear we hear some travelers having issues and sometimes some horror stories from different providers. So if you can lock it in through Italia Tours, I would definitely recommend doing so. It's much easier and will take care of you from start to finish. So yes.
The next question says, what opera would you recommend to see to get a flavor of Italian culture? So I don't know that I have a specific opera in mind, but I can let you know that in Rome, the opera season is already on. I don't know if there's going to be an opera going in the next 2 weeks, but I'll look that up for you and type it into the Q&A recap if I find anything. Also be aware that here in Rome, if you just want to have a night with opera music, there's a church downtown called St. Paul's within the walls, and there's 3 or maybe even 4 different opera companies, like private opera companies that put on concerts within the church. It's an Episcopal church, it's an Anglican church, but it was the first non-Catholic church ever built within inside the city walls. It's very beautiful inside. So if you're looking for opera singers live, you can also stop by. It's on Via Nazionale, so it's right downtown. They also offer a variety of different opera concerts, and it's actually right by the Opera House. So the Opera House doesn't always have operas going every week. It's a mix of ballet, orchestra, and opera. So if you don't see a show that's going, an opera show that's going while you're here in the Opera House, you can always find them at the St. Paul's within the walls. And I'll put that in the Q&A recap, so you'll have links to figure out if you want to look at tickets.
The next one is, would you recommend reservations for dinner? Um, Overall, I guess it would depend a lot on the restaurant. There are some that tend to be really, really busy. So if you have your eye on a specific one, and especially if it's high rated, I would definitely recommend getting a reservation, especially for the weekends. Italians go out a lot during the weekends, so in that case, yes. But in general, if you don't have a specific idea of where to go and you're walking around the city, you will find some restaurants that can see you without a reservation, definitely.
Yeah, and one other thing I would add there is sometimes you'll see restaurants on social media that are really hyped. There's one that's been just perennially hyped for a long time because it's good. It's got good local food, Enzo in Trastevere. But Enzo doesn't like. There's these places that they just don't do reservations. So a place like if you're going to Enzo in Trastevere, you have to just show up and wait. And so just, that's a place that doesn't take reservations, but they'll tell you, like when you walk up, you just have to kind of put your name on the list. So kind of, again, like Sophia said, it depends, but don't be surprised if some of the more popular places have just kind of thrown out the idea of reservations altogether, very Roman style, and just, wait. So that's also common sometimes. Is Uber popular to get around? Yeah, we have Uber here. It's the same app as you use on your home wherever you are coming from. It's the same Uber app. You don't have to change to like an Italian Uber app. And Uber actually also the Uber in Italy also offers taxis. It will show you the local official taxis. I think it's because of the local laws with taxi drivers. They had to require them to include taxi drivers in the app. So it's kind of convenient for that reason. But I'm also getting in the resources list, I provide you a link to a taxi app because I know it can be complicated if you have to, like Italians will call sometimes on their phone and order a taxi, but if you have the language barrier, that can be hard. So there's an app where you don't have to talk to anyone. You can just do it all from your smartphone.
Next up, we have, does RailPass give access to Italia Pass Lounge? I'm not sure. I know there's different types of passes for Rail, so Rail Pass in general may be a bit generic. I can tell you for sure that the Italia Pass membership, of course, does give access to the lounge. And RailAid, you might be thinking of RailAid, that also gives us access to the lounge. So in both cases, yes. I think that's the only ones that we have.
Yeah. Our lounge is nice because it's very exclusive. It's really only open to our customers. So, do taxi drivers speak or understand English? I think they're going to understand your basic tourist English. You're probably not going to have trouble, with numbers, prices, and locations. And you know what? If it is a taxi driver that doesn't speak a word of English, which would be rare, I think, but if they're really having trouble communicating, we're so lucky nowadays with like Google Translate, and you can just show them your smartphone or show them the name. When I first came to Italy over 20 years ago, we didn't have that kind of thing. So you'll be fine. Don't worry. And you can get by a lot on just, motioning or body language. You'll do fine. I know sometimes people worry about, is anyone going to understand me because I don't speak Italian, but you'll find that because Rome has such a huge tourist economy, most hospitality workers in whatever field they're working with tourists are going to have a basic understanding of their context of English. So taxi drivers will understand the context of like prices and addresses and things of that nature. So don't worry, you should be fine. What is a specific time for aperitivo? Would you agree, Sophia? It's like 6:30. I mean, that's Rome generally. Because dinner's
Yeah,
around 8 or 8:30. So do you want to give it like an hour-ish, an hour and a half-ish to kind of chat in your pre-dinner drink? You could also do
yeah.
aperitivo before lunch. FYI.
Anytime, I think.
FYI. Italians can always find a nice time to have a glass of wine. Why not?
Especially, I'm from Venice, so it's if
Oh
you go up
yeah,
there,
boy,
it's
Venice. Yeah, Venice has the chic. What are they called? Cicchetti, right?
Chiquete.
Yeah. That's cool. Yeah, if anyone's going to Venice, check that out for sure. I'll let you take this one because it says Rail Aid. That's your field.
Absolutely. So I bought RailAid when I purchased tickets for Italian Rail. It does say access is allowed. I'm assuming this is regarding the lounge.
The
Yes,
lounge.
for RailAid, it is included.
Okay, cool. Last question. Can you provide an update on any transportation strikes? So I haven't looked lately, but recently we've been having a spate of strikes because of protests around the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. So there have been quite a few, but just so that you know, I always post information about transport strikes in the community. So you don't even have to be signed up at the community. If you just type community.italiapass.com, and there's menus on the left-hand side. There's one menu that says Italy travel updates. I always post. As soon as I find out in the Italian press about a strike, I post information about it there. So, but I'm not aware of any. We've just had like 3 weeks in a row. We've had transport strikes. I think they're gonna calm now, hopefully.
Next up, what do I need to get into Venice? To get in the city itself, there's no specific requirements. You can just go. I would recommend traveling by train if you're coming from another city, just because it will take you straight to the island. However, if you're staying in Mestre, for example, there's also some buses and trams that go there. There is something that was recently introduced. It's like a small access fee that you might have to sign up for if you're traveling during very specific high volume dates. I don't remember the dates off the top of my head, but if you Google Venice access fee, it will give you a complete list of when that is required. It's only a few throughout the year, so it's unlikely that you'll find the
Yeah,
specific one.
I think it's
But
just super high season too. I don't think they do it, and I'm not sure. We did. I also prepared, and I'm going to send you links to this in that email I talked about. I prepared a webinar on Venice and Florence. So if you're interested, because the next question also is it easy to get around Florence and Venice? I'll send you links to these webinars on Florence and Venice as well. And it does talk about that access fee and give you a little bit, kind of like what we did with Rome, but for Florence and Venice. I would say it is easy in general to get around Florence and Venice because they're smaller than Rome for one. Venice is mostly pedestrian, so a lot of walking. Venice can be
yes,
a challenge, I would think, for people who have mobility issues because
definitely.
there's just no, it's just not a place where cars are driving or even golf carts for that matter. It's a very, you got to walk, a lot of walking, so that could be a challenge. Would you add anything to that regarding Florence and Venice?
I'm thinking, yeah, especially Florence, it's such a small gem. I don't think you'll encounter any difficulties whatsoever. Venice, as you mentioned, mobility can be an issue. But there's an official website for the city of Venice that has an accessibility map. So
Oh,
if you
good.
have, yeah, especially for wheelchair users, there's a path throughout the city that one can follow.
Okay.
Um, Yes, so just in case, that's a resource.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, I think that's other than that, there's not a lot of alerts.
Okay, well, we managed to get, oh, last one. This is the last question, and then we'll wrap it up. But if you have any more questions, if anyone has any more, feel free to type them in. I'll answer them offline. Do local taxis accept credit cards or do you need cash? They do accept credit cards now, so that's very convenient. So you don't need to worry about that. However, just to be on the safe side, you might ask them before you get in, because sometimes on the very off chance, because this is Rome and anything can happen, I've had it happen to me where the taxi driver will say, "Oh, my POS, the box where you tap your card, oh, it's dead. It's not charged." So if you anytime you have a doubt, just ask questions before you agree to any service. That would be my advice for avoiding ripoffs. So before you get into if it's a white official taxi, they're by law, they're going to be like on the up and up. But if you're concerned about them not taking credit card, just ask. Just say I've only got a card to pay, and 9 times out of 10 they'll be fine. Because again, we've modernized in Rome, luckily. So, all right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. It was a pleasure telling you about Rome, and I wish you all a very, very buon viaggio. Like I said, be looking for the email I'll be sending to you within the next 24 hours.
Thank you, everyone, and buon viaggio.
Bye.